to do a bit of a centering, and then we'll see how long it is, maybe 20 minutes, hopefully around 20 minutes. Just this idea of the two energies that neuroscience is now showing us, really suggesting that is the heart of rewiring neurologically, letting go of the negative triggers, the negative patterns, the past patterns that aren't working, and truly how to start to allow those neural pathways, those neural nets to realign in the ways that we actually want them to. So I am just going to ask that we all close our eyes in this moment and we give ourselves permission to let go. And we can start this in just the embrace, the holding, the connection with our beautiful body. And we just ask it to let go. We ask our beautiful body to relax, to release any place that we're holding tightness or tension. Just any muscles in the face, shoulders, just in any aspect of our body that we're holding on or holding back, or doing the many ways that we hold life together. Rather, in this moment, we're asking all levels of our consciousness to relax, to release, and to let go. And in that very simple intention, we do find ourselves so easily just falling back into love, letting go of anything that might be tight and uncomfortable, and just really easily falling back into a greater oneness, greater sweetness, just a holding, a loving, a light that is always present, that is always the center of each and every present moment. And so together we do anchor a conscious, clear intention of the highest good. While we are here to embrace and love our human and all the challenges that go with being human, we do anchor this meditation and this time together in an intention of the highest good, of that bright white light that we are, that invisible essence, that loving, that source, that spirit that we are. And we ask that only that which is for the highest good be allowed to take place. And we just ask that we be guided by that huge heart, that overflowing compassion and kindness that lives within. And we also just anchor this moment into a little bit of gratitude. We are grateful to be here in this moment. We're grateful for all that's challenging in our life. And we are grateful for expanding into the awareness that it is that challenge that is asking us to grow, to relax, and to let go of perhaps things that did work but no longer work. We are just grateful for all of the ways that we are being strengthened and expanded and challenged in our beautiful life at this time. For all of this, we do say thank you. And so it is. So rather than get too intellectual on anything, and I will have time to go into a little bit of the science afterwards, I'll put a little bit on the table, just because I do find that when our brain, our big brain, does hear the science, sometimes it really does let our head relax and actually let our heart lead. So I will start with a baby bit of the science in support to really fucking letting go of our head, figuring, analyzing, doing this in a way that we think we need to know what we're doing, but rather truly like a 5-year-old would do it, just truly relaxing and letting go and diving in and just showing up to get our own experience, really just diving in without having to know, well, how does this work? And does this work? Like, can we just dive in? So in service to that, just a baby little bit of the science. And so Relational neuroscience is in the process of not empirically proving, it's very early days, but what we used to believe about how we changed was that something needed to be corrective. You probably are aware of a lot of the mindset information that's out there, and it's often about be aware of this belief. Okay, great, be aware of that, and then know that no, that's not it. Change to a new belief. What we now know neurologically, and have some really beautiful, and I will send an email out also just for these references, but what we are starting to learn is that there are two energies that need to take place in order for actual pathways in the brain to change. And so I'm just going to read a little bit to anchor this. So there are two necessary ingredients that we do need to sustain deep embodied healing, actual changes of our brain, of those neural nets and how they form patterns in the brain. So the first that we need is, and this is maybe be a little disappointing to many of you, but we actually need to have the feeling, the challenge. We need to have the negative expression of that pattern triggered. So if it's doubt, or if it's just the shame and the shittiness you feel of still being in an addictive pattern, or if it's just whatever pattern or thought or feeling that is the one that you don't want anymore, what we do need is the vulnerability to allow that to be triggered. And we're going to go through this, but it needs to be activated also physiologically. So sometimes you'll be aware that, wow, there's like a tightness at your chest, or maybe a pit in your stomach, or chokiness, or an aggravation at the throat, or maybe just you're feeling it. But what we know is that we need that feeling, that physiological response to be triggered. And then we also need to come into an experience of what it is that we're looking to develop. So, and this is a little bit harder to put in specifics. So the second piece that we need here is what is being called an embodied response. So basically what we're going to be giving ourselves is what we needed at the time that pattern started that we didn't get. So pretty much our patterns get created when we start to do something and we get negative feedback. No, we are wrong. We are bad for doing this. Rather than knowing that, yep, as humans, we make mistakes. We can let that go. It doesn't mean anything about ourselves. So we're actually going to give ourselves the experience of that compassion, that oneness, that acceptance. And so we now have found neurologically that having both that feeling of what we don't want, of that negative experience, but then also in that same moment experiencing compassion, experiencing the acceptance, the loving, the okayness, the yeah, that kind of sucks, but I'm with you, I love you. And I'm putting a lot of my own words on it. I'll kind of get more into the raw science after, but that's all I'm going to put on the table before we actually dive in. So we are here to allow two things to become a bridge. One is our human, just whatever shows up for us in a pattern that we don't like. And I'm going to ask that we all do our best to find that in this moment. And it could just be a very human, ordinary pattern of not feeling enough, not feeling like we ever do enough, achieve enough, get far enough in some way. It could be a very physical addiction, maybe, I don't know, you're online shopping more than you want, or there is another form of addiction of wanting to stop doing something, but up until this point you haven't. Or it could just be a repeated feeling or a repeated thought that you don't want. So just allow the spirit in this moment to help you find whatever pattern is for your highest good to focus on right now. And do your best not to search for it too much in the head, but just be aware about what shows up in your body. As I opened to this, what was very present in me was that, not enough. I don't do enough. Not good enough. And so that's what I will be working with in this moment. And so, to the best of your ability, just as much as we spend most of our time resisting feeling shitty, now is the time, if we truly want this aspect of our brain that is stuck in a rut to truly open to a new way. Let's have the courage to vulnerably feel whatever is the physiological and emotional manifestation of the pattern that we're diving into. And it can be quite a vague pattern, like I don't feel enough, through to a very specific one. But just do your best to feel that and be aware of where it does feel like it's anchored in the body. And you can be aware that we have an ability to identify any resistance and to let that go. Is there a part of us that's actually just resisting feeling this? And can we just fucking roll out the welcome mat and go, hey, we do have time, space, and love for you. If it's shame, if it's just whatever shittiness is present right now. And just do your best to feel it, to welcome it, to make so much space and love for it. And we're not going to do anything with it other than just be with it. We might be aware that emotion moves through and we actually cycle into different experiences. But we're actually just now going to be present with it. And we're going to move to that second experience, which truly is the mystical, magical trick of being both a human and a huge loving soul. We can actually feel feelings in our body. We can feel pain. We can feel not enough. But at the same time, we can lift into who we are as the essence that is listening to us, as this essence that is holding for us and actually has great compassion, great empathy, just so much space and kindness. And usually we're aware of how easy it is for us to do it to other people. If someone walks into the room and they're having a shitty time, oh my Lord, our compassion, our holding just floods to them. But we also have a really profound ability to flood that listening, that empathy, that, hey, that sounds really shitty. I'm so sorry you're going through that, to ourselves, into our human. And so we're going to just do a little bit for the next little bit, just bridging these two beautiful experiences that we are. And so just anchoring a little more fully that huge heart, that soul, that loving compassion again. From your heart, from the truth of who you are, how do you feel towards the part of you that's having a hard time? Just be aware of what energy radiates from your heart center. And if you're having a bit of a hard time feeling that, you can either call in a loved one, someone that loves you unconditionally, and you can kind of lean in, borrow from them. How would they feel if you really vulnerably shared how challenging this was? Let that compassion and kindness springboard you into your own compassion and kindness. And so just for the next 10 seconds, we're going to be aware that our loving compassion is like a waterfall. We can measure it with an EKG machine, that warmth, that radiation that we would call compassion or love. Just radiate that into your beautiful human. It's fucking hard being human. It's not easy. Just let that flood. And so now we're just going to practice bridging. We're again going to be aware that we are in our human right now, and just be aware of one way that this pattern shows up in your life that you don't really love. How does this pattern show up and maybe holds you back from really moving on what you want, or just recycles experiences that you really want to let go of? But just let yourself be aware of the impact of this pattern, how it does feel. And just let that humanness feel it. Again, be aware of the ways that can get triggered. We can start to resist feeling that sadness or that anger or that shame. But just really let yourself feel that. Again, really anchoring in where in your physical body you feel it. It can be helpful to be aware of if it had a color, if it had a texture. What color, what texture is this feeling? Is this impact of this pattern? So just be aware of that. Experience it, welcome it, allow it, feel it. And now, continuing to allow this human experience, lifting into the part of you that is listening, that is holding, that is loving, that just so naturally has compassion. And we often work with our feelings in this kind of healing sense as small children, because it is harder to feel genuine compassion for the 45-year-old human that I am, that's still doing the things that I would love not to be. It's harder for me to feel that. So if you need, you can really start to see these feelings, these human aspects, as little children, as little Zoe, as little you. Because really that's when these patterns probably started, when you were very small and didn't have any better options. These beliefs, these lies that get locked in neurologically, cellularly, just through all levels of our consciousness. And so just become aware of that compassion that you have for yourself. And then again, bridging back into the human, letting yourself fall deeply into the feelings of this pattern. I don't feel enough, or whatever that is for you. And letting yourself feel that, but this time we're going to ask them very specifically, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? What is it that you need? And an answer may just pop in immediately for you. Or it may take a little bit of time, but really asking that small human experience, that pit in your stomach or that tightness in your chest, the scratchiness in your throat, whatever sensation, feeling, physiology is going on, really asking that, what do you need? What do you want? And really allowing yourself to hear that. You can write it down if you like, but usually it's very clear as to what these parts of us need. And usually, if not always, there's some level of, I need to be loved, I need to be accepted, I need to know that everything's going to be okay. So whatever that is for you in this moment, whatever experience this human part of you needs, it's now time to again lift into your huge loving heart, that abundance of compassion that is who you are, and flooding your beautiful human aspect with this experience. And we're going to take some time in silence to use our imagination to anchor this experience. We do know that scientifically our body, including our brain, can't tell the difference between what is imagined and what happens in real life. So use your imagination to give your physiology, including your brain, the experience that you need. If you need to feel loved and accepted, do whatever comes present for you in your imagination to feel that, to imagine it, visualize it. Let it get in on every level of your body. We'll have a couple of minutes to use our imagination to flood us with whatever we need, whatever we want right now. And so just allowing yourself to continue to flood your beautiful human with whatever it is that you need and want. And completing this in some beautiful small way with gratitude. And it might be very obvious, or it might not be obvious at all, that this pattern that you created actually was needed and was of great support and help for you at one time. We actually don't ever create any patterns that we don't need, that isn't for our own coping or survival at some point. So just really thanking our beautiful human for using this pattern to help get us what we need, to help us survive or cope in some way, and doing our best to really feel so grateful for it. Like, thank you for helping me get through. So grateful, so celebratory that this aspect does experience completion. There is no longer a need for it to protect, to cope, to work in this way. Rather, this aspect has what it needs. It has that love, that safety, that truth that it needs. So just really thanking our beautiful human. Thank you for doing whatever you had to survive, to cope. Great job. And we're ready to upgrade. We're ready to show up in greater courage and beauty and boldness. But thank you. Thank you for getting me through in this way, in service to graduating, to completing this pattern. And so now, if you do have any kind of spiritual practice that does support in the completion when you're connected with your human, I encourage you to do that. I like to do statements of self-forgiveness whenever I'm open and really connected with that human karma. I love to complete any of this, and I don't have the science for this, but if I was a betting woman, I would bet a lot of money that in maybe, I don't know, 10, 20, 50 years, we will have evidence that it is self-forgiveness. It is moving from blame and finding fault and holding something against ourselves through to, hey, I did the best that I can, and I'm ready to have complete compassion, complete forgiveness. I'm ready to let myself off the hook for anything and everything so that slate can be wiped clean. I do believe that that neurologically wipes the slate clean so that we don't need to protect and be against, fault find, criticize. We're like, maybe it's time for a new day. Maybe we can let this go and really show up as that small, beautiful, free child that we always are inside. So I'm going to do a bit of self-forgiveness, and you can use the phrase, I forgive myself for buying into the misbelief that. That's my favorite phrase that I got from the University of Santa Monica. But whatever works for you in truly just filling yourself up with that loving, that support, just to complete before we finish this meditation and go into a bit more of a chat. So we'll have a couple of minutes just to do whatever you are called to do, to complete, to clear. And another 20 seconds or so to complete. All righty. So I did want to just kind of, after that, just underscore a little bit about what we know, because I do think it's a profound time to start to uncover some of this science that's actually proving that it is love and it is compassion that is what heals, and not just in a very woo-woo sense, but actually that helps our brain, our neural pathways actually rewire from that coping strategy through into something that's positive and supportive. So, and I am just reading a few slides here just so that I get some of the information accurate. And if you do want any of the links to the specific journals and references I've found, feel free to throw your email in the chat and I will send this to you. I think I'll also do a blog post about this and reference it. But what we have now found is that what actually allows humans to change, heal, and grow, especially if we have a history of trauma. And I think the wonderful thing that we're learning now is that if you're a human being, you have a history of trauma. No one had a perfect life, and our parents did the absolute best they could. But we're all coping. We're all imperfect people just doing the best that we can. And so we do learn to play small, to hide our needs, to hide our feelings in order to cope, in order to protect ourselves in some way. So early on, we thought psychologically that it was catharsis that was the way that would heal that. If we just feel it, right? If we just feel sad and we can let that go, that is actually what was healing and clearing. We now know that that's not enough. And yes, it's a necessary component, feeling that, letting ourselves activate that physiology, activate that neural pathway in the brain. But now, and it makes pretty much sense if you're a loving person, like, oh, wow, there is something activated. It was created because it didn't get something that it wanted, some form of safety, some form of support, some form of acceptance and loving. So what else do we need? Oh, we need to receive that loving, that compassion. We need to move from, this isn't anything about who we are, this is against us, but wow, maybe this is for us. Maybe there is a beautiful experience here that doesn't mean I'm bad or wrong or need to judge myself. Maybe this is an opportunity for love and compassion. So, and you can also Google relational neuroscience. This is where this body of work has emerged from. I am taking a little bit of liberty in that a lot of this work is about how a therapist or how a healer would be with a client, right? The two necessary ingredients are to feel our human, to go into that physiological sensation of I'm afraid or I'm sad, I'm angry. And then that is what the gift of doing healing therapeutic work with someone is, that we can be that reflection of compassion, of like, oh no, I love you, even though you're doing that. Oh, I accept you, even though you feel that. And what we do have available to us, however, is that we are our own healer. We are our own mother and father and source of the love that we need. And for those of you that have gone through spiritual psychology, we have a very clear understanding of it is our love that is actually the most healing, and maybe the only healing that there is in through some lenses. But really being able to put these two pieces together, it's in some ways, as I say it out loud, it's so simple that it's like, well, how can that be, right? And I'm often triggered into just the experience of what is healing. And I often, with clients and with myself, right, when moments when we fall down and feel shitty and we start to enter into some kind of downward spiral, what is the most healing thing in the whole world, right? It could be just a big hug from mum, or just someone swooping in, not to change, not to fix, not to make anything different, but just to be with us, to love us and to accept us, so that we know that there's nothing that we need to hold on to and judge about ourselves in this moment, that we can have compassion, forgiveness, and just let it go. Is there anything else I want to share about this? Oh, well, the only other quick thing that I will share, and if there are questions, comments, we definitely have time. But that is a lot of, in psychology, a lot of about what I've been reading is that we used to think that what was most helpful in terms of changing beliefs was correction. You know, I'm aware that, I'm not enough, right? We would be aware of the correction. We now know that in order for our brain to change, that energy of correction actually requires a judgment of bad, of wrong. What we more need to do, and this is what this energy of compassion does, it's like this energy of yes, and yes, I needed to feel like I wasn't enough at that point. For some reason, that helped me cope. This belief, this pattern actually helped me cope. So it's not a correction or it's not a correction and againstness in any sense. It's an and. It's a like, yes, for some reason, not feeling enough was something that you needed to do, and let's bring in that loving and what you do want. So in changing belief systems, I'm often aware in mindset of almost an againstness, like I'm wrong for feeling like, for having all these beliefs, and that will actually help us hold on to them, rather than if we can have compassion and understanding and experience, it's hard. It's hard being human. We all feel not enough. We all feel ashamed. We all feel stupid. We all feel angry. We all feel like a little bitch. Sometimes we all feel all of those things. We're not a terrible person because we created those patterns. We're just humans. So can we go, yeah, there was a purpose there, and that's beautiful. And actually, what I'd prefer to experience is how beautiful I am, how big, how brave. But it's, instead of going, no, don't believe that you're not enough. And a lot of mindset stuff, there's like, no, you know, like no, you're better than that. Well, maybe we could transform that to a yes, there has been a place for that. And the greater truth is that you don't need that anymore. You don't need to play small in order to be safe. You don't need to hide your light in order to truly be seen and loved and celebrated. So I will send a follow-up email just with some of the logistics of this, but I hope that was helpful.